So I've had this wet polisher for a few years now, and I bought it initially for countertops because I wanted to do polished counters. At the end of the day, I ended up not doing polished counters because someone told me that if I used this thing within 30 days of pouring the counters, I was going to start ripping stones out. So I had a professional telling me that, so of course I didn't have that much time for my countertops to be done, so I ended up not even using this. So this thing sat in my bag for years until eventually I came across a sunroom that I was doing that had like almost no budget. So this project on one of our properties only had about a $400 budget to finish the floor and the curb. So kicking around ideas, I thought about tiling it, thought about, which is obviously going to cost more than $400 for the space. Thought about painting the floor, didn't want to do that, or just leaving it raw concrete. And then I remembered I had this wet polisher, which is obviously, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you, too small for a floor. I cannot stress that enough. I would not do that again with this polisher. Of course, I said that, and I ended up using it again for an apartment floor, which I also had a shoestring budget. But anyways, had this polisher, so it ended up being about $300 in chemicals to get the floor polished. Now, of course, there's going to be a professional that watches this, and they are going to scream in the comments below, why did you use the big polisher? Well, that is because I could not find one, I could not rent one, looked around. I do not recommend using this polisher for a floor. All I'm saying, the whole point of this video, is that this thing has been beaten beyond belief and torture tested and still works. That's the point of the video. I am not saying that you should use this to polish your whole house. The other thing is, if you try using this for a floor, you are not going to get it as perfect as those big machines that cost 25 grand. But this is what I had. I had a shoestring budget. This is what I used on this floor, and yes, to my shame, I used it on another floor, which I will post pictures of as well. Again, in a pinch, it did work, and the floor is acceptable. So, a couple of things with this thing though. First of all, I didn't think it was gonna make it to the end. I thought for sure it was gonna burn this thing out. So you hook the hose up, obviously, wet polisher, on this, for this guy. And I've actually used this thing a few times on ceilings, obviously not wet, polishing Venetian plaster, and doing wax and stuff like that, but this is my first time using it for concrete. So this is what it looked like after a big project that I just finished. Now the thing with this, so here's the plug, obviously the breaker on it. Now the funny thing about this is that even though this is a wet polisher, this thing, when it got real sloppy, was zapping the crap out of me. So I don't have them with me, but I ended up buying PVC gloves, and then it was fine. But for wet polisher, you would think that you'd be able to get away with that, but I guess not. I'm sure, and to be clear, this is a cheap one. This is a really cheap polisher. Considering it came with the pads, really, really cheap model. I think I spent $250 on this thing, and it still works after the hell I put this thing through. So, anyways, this is the actual unit, and then you get your pads. Now, what this one came with was, I believe it was a 5-inch pads. I think it starts with 50 grit, all the way up to, I want to say it's 3,000. It's a 7-inch aggressive pad. This is the first pass. This thing chews through, you got like a area that's a little buckled like I did in the other project that I did. It was a little buckled. Now with this thing chewed it right down. This thing also chewed through carpet glue and all kinds of other nasty stuff. And there's still some teeth on this thing. This was, I think, 80 bucks, but worth every penny. I cannot stress that enough. It chewed through, I think there was a coat of sealer on this floor initially. This thing chewed right through it. Do not run this too long in one spot. It will create a terrible ledge. But that is the point. This thing chews. It also makes a monstrous mess. So I ended up getting a dust shroud, which also, this thing is worth its weight in gold. So you put this on the bottom of the unit. This is obviously your blade. You hook this side up to a shop vac. It sucks up at least 80% of the slop that this thing creates. Because I had a bigger floor, I did spring for a 7-inch pads. So they're just like the smaller version, but 7 inches. And yes, when you're doing a big square footage project, those extra couple inches matter. So it's basically the same thing, just 7 inches. I'll post a link for all this below. And then the final pass is the buff pads after you do your sealer coat. And that's that. Like I said, again, I cannot stress enough, that is not what this is for big floors. I use it for a big floor because it was in a pinch and broke. Tile is a huge pain in the butt too, and I just couldn't bear to leave it raw or paint it. So we did that, cast the sills, did no trim around the windows, ended up being very inexpensive, but ended up being a very nice look. So that's that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Yes, this thing is a cheap one. There are more expensive, nicer ones, but this is like bare bones, the cheapest, put through hell, and it lasted. Now, I'm not saying it would last for another floor, but for $250, I guess I can't complain. Let me know what you guys think. Comments below. I'll talk to you next time.